Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Grant. I'm also the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. If you've been following along, you know that we are in season 2 of our podcast, and we are going chapter by chapter through our new book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution. You can find this book on Amazon and get it in Kindle form, paperback, hardback, whatever it is that you need. And we have our members in this book providing very practical advice on how to divorce in the best way possible. And today I am joined by one of our board members and one of our most active members who wrote several chapters of the book, Andrew Hatherley, who is also the host of the Gray Divorce podcast. If you're listening and you're interested in topics about gray divorce, you can obviously head over to his podcast and get lots of great information. Also, look back through the episodes in our podcast list and you will see others that he has recorded so that you can get all of the best information. Andrew, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you very much, Tracy Ann. A pleasure as always.
And explain to people, you're not just a podcast host, but what are your other credentials that have led you towards this passion for gray divorce?
Well, a passion for gray divorce was a result of my going through my own gray divorce 10 years ago. We just celebrated the 10th anniversary of my hopefully one and only divorce.
Well, let's hope so. Your wife is lovely.
Yes, she is, and she's definitely my better half, as everybody keeps reminding me.
Yes, that's true.
When I went through my divorce, I'm a financial advisor, and I help people with their retirement planning and in investment management. And when I went through my divorce, I was humbled by how little I knew about the financials involved in the divorce process. Of course, you've heard it a million times before. We don't think it's going to happen to us. We don't prepare for it. And so I was taken aback by how little I knew. Ultimately, as I've said 1,000 times, it's often the largest financial transaction in our lives. And so I determined that after my divorce, I would probably add a great deal more value if I focused on working with people emerging from late life divorce, not only financially, but also emotionally and mentally, where there's a psychological component to readapting to life after late life divorce. And I love sharing my experiences there with people. So the first order of business after my divorce was I earned the CDFA credential, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. And I set up a separate business called Wiser Divorce Solutions. So with Wiser Divorce Solutions, I help people in the before and during stages of divorce. I work with my clients and their attorneys to help them with the financials of the case, to do some deep dives on what would be the most tax efficient way to go, to look at their other spouse's financials, how much spousal support can this person support, how much does my client need, and to help the attorney with questions like these. And I also work as a neutral mediator in many cases and then refer people to attorneys to do the legal work. And then, of course, I have my registered investment advisory firm, Transcend Retirement. And many times I do end up helping people on a long-term basis, after their divorce. Actually, what we're going to talk today about is the short-term after divorce. And then there's the long-term after divorce, which is financial management, financial planning over time. And as you mentioned, thank you for mentioning the Gray Divorce podcast. We just celebrated the 3rd year of the podcast, the 80th episode, and that's been a tremendous part of my life and part of creativity post-divorce, because I created this podcast as something with purpose and meaning to help other people. And yes, it does help my business as well. But so many people call me from around the country saying, I've appreciated listening to your podcast. It's helped so much. And, that's part of the post-divorce reinvention is finding something to do with meaning, purpose, and perhaps reinvent what you're doing with your working life as well. Because obviously the financials change after divorce, and we'll probably get into that a little bit in our conversation.
So if you're listening and you have any financial questions about late life divorce, gray divorce, Andrew is your guy, not just for information, but for helping you financially. And we really love working with Certified Divorce Financial Analysts. A lot of times people are like, is that a thing? What does that even mean? And these professionals just have a higher level of training, expertise, and professionalism to not just help you with, financial planning or division, but really another level when you're going through divorce. I always tell people divorce is a special time of life. It could be the largest financial transaction, normally is, of anybody's life. And so you really do want to work with specialists in divorce when you are going through that time. And you can find in our directory, people are broken down as well by these designations and specialties, and it's noticed in their profile as well. So you can go there, look for somebody, and learn more about that. Today with Andrew, we have gotten all the way to chapter 76, which I can't believe it. We've been doing these podcasts all year long, and here we are, we're at the end. And so this chapter is rebuilding financially after divorce. Andrew has just touched on that. A lot of people, you get to the point of divorce, everything has now been divided. So they're sitting there with half of what they had, and so that can be often very daunting, especially later in life where you're focused on, potentially retirement and having little time to rebuild. So what are your tips for helping people when they're faced with this post-divorce?
Well, the first thing is to get organized. And the first course of business, hopefully you've been working as a person going through divorce. Hopefully you've been working with a certified divorce financial analyst, because they can stick with you after the divorce to help you get a lot of the logistical things done. Mm-hmm. Getting your accounts transferred into your name, reminding you to get your name off of credit cards or to close credit cards, to retitle your automobiles, to make sure that you own insurance if you're receiving spousal support, owning insurance on your ex's life in case they pass away. All due respect to attorneys, but when the ink is dry in the divorce, more often than not, it's bye-bye.
Yeah. We're done. And there's lots of language in the settlement agreement that's going to say your attorney is not a financial or tax expert or any of these other kinds of things. So for me to act in that role would be malpractice.
Exactly.
Nobody would want me to do that. And so I am very happy to pass this role off to the proper financial professional to help my client.
Well, the thing is, after divorce, and I know, having gone through a 9-month divorce myself, is that you're so relieved when it's over. The tendency may be to sit back and relax, but there's still work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And I mentioned some of the logistical things a moment ago, but there's some very key important things that can't be forgotten as well. I think back on one case where a lady called me, and it was 6 years after her divorce, and she hadn't executed the quadro yet. Now,
big mistake.
For listeners out there, most of our listeners know what a quadro is, qualified domestic relations order. Essentially, this is the order splitting the husband's 401k and giving her half. Well, what had happened in those intervening 6 years? The market wasn't very good. The husband had taken withdrawals. She ended up with far less than she would have if she had simply done what she was supposed to have done. And, I don't necessarily blame her, but she didn't have financial advice at the time. And, it's a sad situation that unfortunately happens all too often.
It does. I've seen that quite a lot. I'll say as a practice tip, if you're listening and you have a 401k involved in your divorce, the best thing that you can do is have that drafted during the divorce so that it is submitted to the judge at the same time that your divorce is finalized. The judge will first sign the document divorcing you, second the quadro, and don't delay in getting that done and off to the plan administrator to divide those funds. I've seen exactly what Andrew's talking about, where the market tanks, somebody rolls it over to an IRA and it's in a different form, and you have to find it and trace it. So do tie up that piece as soon as you can, close to the time of divorce.
Let me continue the conversation on quadros, because there's a couple of important things related to life after divorce and dealing with 401ks and quadros. Hopefully, if you've been working with a financial person during the divorce, he's taken a look at your future situation and incorporated an element of future financial planning into the divorce work. The idea being, well, what are we going to do with half the 401k that you get? Is it going to be part of your retirement for the future, or do you need the funds now, or do you need some of the funds now? And if that's the case, your financial advisor should already have worked with you to contact the plan sponsor to determine how you can get money out of that 401k if you need it. Because you have an opportunity through divorce pursuant to the quadro that if you need money from the 401k, let's say for a down payment on a house, and you're, let's say, under 59 and a half years of age, you can access those funds directly from the alternate payee account at the plan without incurring that 10% penalty. This is something so many people talked about. Well, I'm going to roll it into an IRA, and then I know I'm going to take a tax hit to put the down payment on the house. I say, yeah, you're going to take a tax hit. You're also going to take a 10% penalty if you take the money that you need direct from the plan. So, that's an issue there. But it's important to understand the plan because they all have slightly different rules on the timing of distributions. Now, one story that I always tell when I'm giving presentations on late life divorce particularly is the famous case of Kennedy and the DuPont Savings and Investment Plan. Now, this was a case where Mr. Kennedy had a big 401k at DuPont, big company, and he didn't want to leave it to his wife after the divorce. And she said, okay, keep your precious 401k. And it is always precious. It's like Lord of the Rings, men in their 401ks.
Yes, for sure.
My precious. And she even agreed to a waiver of interest in the marital settlement agreement. Said, I do not want any part of his 401k. Well, anyway, fast forward 20 years. Mr. Kennedy passes away, and DuPont look at their paperwork, say, well, Mrs. Kennedy's the beneficiary on this. And what do you think the kids said? Well, the kids took this to the Supreme Court, is what the kids did.
Wow. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the kids were SOL because Mr. Kennedy did not update the plan document. The plan document with the ERISA plans. These are federally guided plans like 401k. They're the Bible in these things. And so this is a key component of what needs to be done after divorce from estate planning purposes is to update your beneficiaries. You got to go through all your accounts and make sure those beneficiaries are updated, that your wills are, or even better, trusts are updated, particularly on federal plans. Some states have what are called automatic revocation laws where they will consider that, okay, you didn't mean your spouse to be beneficiary of this account. But don't count on those. Just get it done and get those beneficiaries updated.
Yes. So sometimes people think just the divorce itself is going to have this sort of magical ability, but there is actually some homework to do after the fact. Takes a little bit of time, but somebody can help you with this. Just get everything done properly.
Oh, yeah.
One of your other top tips, which you've touched on a little bit already, is, the divorce is final. Meet with your divorce financial advisor.
Well, for sure, because, all right, assuming that some of these important logistical issues and administrative issues have been dealt with, that you're then going to want to look at the assets that you've come out of the divorce with, and hopefully perhaps the CDFA worked with you during the divorce, perhaps not. But you want to know what you came out of the divorce with afterwards, and how are those assets going to serve as a financial foundation for the rest of your life. Now, it depends obviously on your age. If you're in your 30s and 40s, chances are you're going to continue working for another 15, 20, 30 years. If you're in later life, perhaps not. The other thing to consider is, in many cases, not all, women are increasingly taking a more active role in their investment management. But because I tend to deal with older people, I see so many cases where the wife might be my client and she'll show me her husband's 401k or investment account, and they'll be well into their 60s and it'll still be 90% stocks. So, well, that's great, but your net worth's just been cut in half. You're 2 years away from retirement. We're entering asset protection mode here. There may need to be a growth component to your investments, but your risk tolerance may not be quite what your husband's risk tolerance was. So we certainly need to examine the portfolio from that standpoint as well. That's the investment management piece. So there are other key important pieces with financial metrics and financial tools after divorce, namely the budget and the net worth statement. Now, if you're anything like me, Tracy, budgets, they're no fun. Nobody wants to do a budget. But
I don't want to be on a budget. Nobody wants to be on a budget, but here we are.
It's kind of, as a financial advisor, I kind of geek out on this a little bit because one of the things I like but one of the things I appreciate about the divorce process is that it mandates that people have to do budgets.
Yeah. And sometimes for the first time ever.
It's often for the first time. It's often for the last time.
Yes. They're like, we spend what on what, because it's often startling to see those numbers for the first time.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I like working with people on their budgets because obviously during the divorce, it can be a key tool with respect to determining spousal support. But post divorce, we're in a situation where typically the net worth of the family's been cut in half. If it's been a litigious divorce, there may have been debts incurred. Quite often, this happened to me. When I was going through my divorce, my car decided to give up the ghost, so I needed to buy
Yeah.
a new car. At the time, my net worth was being cut in half. And so budgeting became important and prioritizing became important. And as you just said, people start to realize where the money's going. You always hear about how much you could save if you didn't go to Starbucks every day or whatever. But, I use the analogy of the $150 a month gym, which is probably a $200 a month gym now.
Now it is.
I,
Yeah.
I used to belong to one of these shishi suburban $200 a month gyms where every car in the parking lot's an Audi, a BMW, or Tesla, or whatever. And I've quickly discovered that the $20 a month gym has pretty much the same equipment, and I can get the work done there and
Yeah.
be with the pickup trucks and the broken down Volvos. So a budget can help you kind of focus a little bit on where your expenses go. And it's important also to look at credit card debt. And I mentioned buying a car. I hate the idea of a car loan because a car loan essentially it's debt assumed for a depreciating asset. We all know the value of a car
Yeah.
drops about 25% when you get it off the lot, and you've taken out a loan on that for which you're paying. Well, the rates usually aren't terrible, but you're still paying on a depreciating
Interest.
asset. So this is where the net worth statement can come into play. And net worth statement is actually a lot of fun compared to a
It's
budget.
fun for Andrew.
I think net worth statements can be fun for everybody. Fun with spreadsheets.
I disagree, but we'll let you have your good
Yeah,
times.
let me have my fun. But I'll tell you where that served as not only a financial but a psychological tool for me emerging from divorce, because as I've said ad nauseum, a net worth was cut in half. So looking at your net worth, you're looking at, okay, what are my assets right now and what are my liabilities? And those assets, retirement accounts, bank accounts, maybe home equity, minus liabilities, the mortgage on the house, the payment on the car, the credit card bills. And what's at the bottom line is what you're worth financially.
Yeah.
So I like to put a spreadsheet together and review that. And I still do this 10 years after my divorce
That's great.
because it's shown me how far I've come. And it's encouraging because when you're emerging from divorce and let's say you've got debts and credit card bills, your net worth can actually increase as you pay down debt. Now, your assets may not be increasing very much. You may not be putting aside much to save, but you're paying down debt. And by reducing that amount, your assets minus a declining number increases the bottom line net worth. So you may be accustomed to see your retirement account worth X $100,000 and it's not anymore, and your net worth took a big hit. But if you can see first quarter, second quarter, third quarter that things are improving, it just gives you some encouragement, gives you some confidence
Right.
going forward. So I did an article, and if anybody's interested in geeking out on this subject, I did an article on Kiplinger's.com on budgets and net worth statements. But I think those are certainly useful tools after.
And just as you can hear that I'm not excited about those tools, hire somebody who is, like Andrew, a financial professional. What we get excited about as lawyers is the law. Mediators get excited about a resolution, but you want to hire the right person and their right level of enthusiasm for the task.
Well, let me tell you, Tracy, what I'm even more enthusiastic about.
Oh gosh.
The numbers are important. Yes, the numbers are important, and money's important. But ultimately, what's happiness is our sense of contentment, for lack of a better word, our happiness, our sense of meaning and purpose in life. And obviously, many of us who've gone through divorce know that we take a bit of a hit in our confidence and our self-esteem, not only our finances, we may doubt ourselves. And I like to help people, however possible, with their money, but also their life after their divorce. And this is why I love the concept of financial life planning so much, because the financial services industry is always focused on the bottom line. I just talked a lot about money and things, but the financial
Yeah.
service are figures attached to them. And these were the people's supposed magic numbers they needed to reach before they could drift off into the sunset with a pina colada and a beach chair or pickleball or what have you. I like that the financial services industry likes to do that because they like people focusing exclusively on the money, because that
Right.
means they're going to be gathering money and billing fees on the money. Financial advisors, financial planners are typically much more comfortable with charts and graphs than they are with psychology and discussing issues of personal enrichment and growth with their clients. I like to think I'm as committed to both of those sides of the equation in the financial planning realm. And look, we've all dealt with high net worth divorce cases. Some of the most unhappy people I've seen have the biggest bank accounts. It's a
Yeah.
cliche, but money does not buy happiness. What brings contentment is your relationships with other people, a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging, an ability to get out of your own head and think about what the work you're doing is helping other. There's even a term about it called helper's high. And I've felt that I felt that a couple of weeks ago, helping my mother-in-law put up a curtain rod. I mean, my wife asked me, my mom needs a curtain rod put up, and of course my first reaction was not one of enthusiasm. But
Right.
in the process of doing it and working with my hands and getting it done, and her being grateful, I thought that was nice. That
Yeah.
worked out well. And I think quite often depression and depression after divorce comes from inside our heads, and the more we can get outside of our heads. So Brian Portnoy, a colleague of mine, has coined a term called funded contentment, and that's that our money should be at the service of what brings us happiness, and it shouldn't be about the accumulation of money for its own end. And so I think that's an important component of financial life planning, is to have these conversations with people and realize what is, and help them
You're right.
come to terms with what really makes them happy. And maybe they're not going to have that, at least right now. If they follow my net worth path and my budget path, maybe they will get back to the 2-3 million that they envisioned 10 years ago. But you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe what they've got is just fine for the important things in life, the time they spend with friends, family, and focusing on focusing on experiences rather than fancy cars and fancy handbags.
Right. There's no need to come after the handbags, but I understand I understand your point. And I think what you are talking about is being a professional, which we just love to have in the Amicable Divorce Network, that takes a very holistic approach. It's not just give me the numbers, let's put them on a spreadsheet, but it's more like looking at your overall well-being and connecting you to the right people that, can help you with different issues, and really caring for people as a person, not just a client or a customer moving down a pipeline, but really trying to do the best by people in all aspects of their life. And so that's something that I think is very different about our network. I think everybody has that care for people, and you've certainly expressed that here. Another one of your tips to touch on is estate planning, because I think also a lot of times people maybe had a will from 15 years ago and they've gotten a divorce and they just don't do much after that point to update that will.
Yeah, I mean, and I would recommend trusts as well. And this is not
Yes.
just a matter of people going through divorce, but certainly they need to, create their own trusts. This part of the updating the beneficiaries, I think that's the simplest, the low-hanging fruit on the estate planning, is do that immediately yourself. Consult with a tax advisor and an estate planner, because
Yeah.
chances are, I mean, you're going to be alone for a while probably. I mean, not many people jump right into a relationship with somebody else. Some do. But if you're going to be alone for a while and you've got adult children, estate planning can be so important from the perspective of, what happens if you get ill. You don't want to be a burden to your adult children. Do you
Right.
have long-term care insurance? Insurance is a big part of estate planning. Do you have some sort of long-term care insurance that will help lessen the load for your loved ones? Do you have health care directives and
Yeah.
springing powers of attorney, so that when you were married, it was likely everything was in a joint account, and your spouse could take over. But when you're single, you need to have these things codified in a good plan, and it's always a good idea to consult with an estate planning attorney to get a simple trust put together, and it's private as well. It's not.
Yeah, it's not filed anywhere. Yeah, and I think that's another misconception. People think, oh, I'm divorced. These things have automatically revoked. Every state law is different, so please investigate and do what you need to do in your particular circumstance. What should people do in regards to taxes?
Well,
Everybody's favorite topic.
yeah, of course. Hopefully, your financial advisor during the course of the divorce was looking forward and saying, okay, well, this time next year, you're going to be filing as a single person. So during the divorce, maybe there's some transactions or some sales of assets that could be done that could lessen the tax load on the marital estate. But after the divorce, you're going to want to need to take a copy of the marital settlement agreement to your tax advisor. And if you don't have a tax advisor, get one and say, okay, this year, the year just finished, I filed married, filing jointly. This year, I'm going to be filing separately. What are the implications on my tax liabilities based on this new situation? And we can also also run into issues on distributions from retirement plans, particularly as we discussed before. Am I going to need money from my IRA? If so, how much should I be withholding so that I'm not hit with a huge tax bill at the end of the year? Is it possible to, if you're younger than 59 and a half, speak to your attorney about that? Your tax advisor about that. If there was a sale of a house, you're going to want to mention to him if there was huge capital gains involved in the sale of the house.
That's a big one right now that people aren't anticipating or thinking about because we've seen such a spike in real estate values and they're just not getting information about that beforehand post-divorce, and it's capital gains.
Yeah,
put that on your list.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're
Please.
You want to make sure that you're entitled to any capital gains exclusions that are available to you, under current law. Yeah, the work shifts from the legal work with your attorney, and now you need to focus on some of the financial work that you need to be part of going forward, and certainly tax and estate planning advisors, will enter into the discussion more here.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk to Andrew all day about all these different topics, but we do need to bring the episode to a conclusion. If you want to do a deeper dive into these topics, grab our book, get it on Amazon. He's written several chapters that get into more detail about these financial topics and Gray Divorce. Other than the Gray Divorce podcast, Andrew, if people are listening and they want to work with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
They can find me via my website, transcendretirement.net. They can email me at andrew@wiserdivorcesolutions.com. And all this information is also on the Great Divorce Podcast, which is on all your friendly neighborhood podcast servers, platforms.
And you can also find Andrew on the Amicable Divorce Network website. Just search our database and you will find him. And if for some reason you can't, just reach out to us and we will connect you directly.
I do want to mention that I do work nationally.
Yeah, go ahead.
I work with people around the country. I'm currently based in Nevada, but I will be moving to South Carolina in the spring. And so, but I'll still be working with people in Nevada and all of California and the East Coast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of our professionals, because of Zoom, are able to meet with you. Don't get focused if you don't see somebody in your geographic area exactly, because the world has opened up. We do a lot of Zoom meetings, and we can find somebody to help you wherever you're at, and Andrew can help you all over the United States. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. If you're listening and you couldn't grab Andrew's information because you're driving, save this episode, look in the show notes, and you will find his information there, and hit subscribe so that you continue to get all of the best information on how to divorce as well as possible. Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.